I felt myself going numb and almost fell to the ground next to the car. There was blood seeping from my wounds, and I was fairly certain that my shoulder had suffered some sort of muscle injury. I could feel shrapnel in my back and a dozen scrapes on my arms. Later on, I would learn that this feeling of numbness was typical for the first few minutes following a gunshot. Nerve endings need time to determine the extent of trauma, and the body takes time to process information. Sometimes the body requires more time the deeper the wound. I was becoming distracted. The shock was starting to wear off, and I knew I had a few minutes left before I passed out. Still, I made it close enough to meet her gaze. Her bleeding was nearly as bad as mine. Her eyes were all I could see as I dozed off, though there were voices calling out and people approaching. They were all that mattered in the end. I was transported back in time as it became dark. Families are peculiar creatures. Every family is unique. Every family is different due to the mixture of personalities, ages, viewpoints, and genetics. Mine was also the same. Harry Otho is my name, and I grew up in a typical nuclear family as the middle child. Roger, my dad, Martha, my mom, and 3 children, me, the odd one out, my younger sister Joan, who is small like my mom, and my older brother Greg, who is a muscular, well-built man like our father. I'm much thinner than the rest of my family and have sandy brown hair. Dad would just laugh and tell me to toughen up when Greg would bully me. Life is never fair, he would frequently remind me. As we grew older, we engaged in all the activities that families enjoy, such as park visits and picnics. Naturally, I inherited all of Greg's clothes, even the ones that were 2 sizes too large. To keep my clothes together, my mom recently bought me belts and suspenders. Greg and Joan always got new stuff, and even though I was the one left out, I had to accept that. I guess another factor was that Dad was always more critical of me than the other kids. Joan had always been his little girl, and Greg was just like him. My father called me the error. Upon reaching adolescence, my family never expressed concern about me being left out or abandoned at home. Occasionally, my mother would express worry, but my father would respond with his typical "life is never fair" remark, leaving me on my own. The one good thing that came out of being left alone so much is that I learned a lot. I did some studying. I constructed something. My interest in science and technology began in school, and over the course of a few years, I worked odd jobs and saved up enough cash to purchase a computer for myself. I built it and discovered how things worked, even though it was made of computer parts from various places. Studying was my haven from the struggles I was facing at home. I gained knowledge of biology, chemistry, geography, physics, and history. In addition, I studied Spanish, German, and English. With all the hours I spent by myself in my room, I felt like a human sponge. I consistently received high marks and accolades from my teachers for all of my school reports, and I was a straight-A student. At home, I got a "well done" and a small smile from my mother and a grunt from my father, even though it seemed like they didn't care. All Greg did was make fun of me for being a school geek. It was only in his final years of high school that he had passed his remedial math classes. Under the pretense of brotherly love, Greg increased the force and frequency of his beatings of me, and it seemed that Dad supported it. Joan laughed and looked away. One time, Mom saw me attempting to apply ice to a bruise over my right kidney. She held the ice there for a few minutes and warned me not to give my brother any encouragement. "But I don't say or do anything, Mom. I try to stay out of his way, but if he can, he always throws punches as hard as he can whenever I am passing by. It feels like I was born into the wrong family because of the way Greg treats me and how Dad supports it." Mom appeared to be about to say something, but she decided against it. Rather, she said, "I'll discuss it with your father and brother and arrange for them to be let go. They probably don't consider it because they aren't built like them." After a few days, Mom must have spoken to them because Greg began to punch me in the stomach when he came into my room while I was sleeping. Dad never said anything, but he was the kind of man who could look good wearing both a smile and a sneer. I had bruises all the time from wearing clothes that never fit. I took care to make sure the consequences of the beatings remained hidden from everyone at school until that fateful day. Someone threw a metal bar in my path as a joke while I was being forced to run track for physical education, causing me to trip and open a gash down my arm. After sending me to the medical bay, Mrs. Erskine, the school nurse, asked me to take off my shirt so she could clean and bandage the gash. She was an older woman. "Harry, it's all right, my love. You don't have anything I haven't seen, and this old woman has raised 3 sons. In order to prevent infection, we must clean this." I hesitated for a few more seconds before removing my shirt, making sure Mrs. Erskine wouldn't see the most recent bruises Greg had given me 2 days prior. After a few minutes, the wound started to hurt less, and she cleaned me up and applied a nice, tight compression bandage. After she was done, I turned around and put on my shirt. Mrs. Erskine gasped as she saw the enormous black and yellow mark that was running up my back. "Harry, are you okay?" I attempted to downplay it because I knew that nobody in my family appreciates a snitch. "Mrs. E, I'm good. I must have injured myself when I fell a few days ago and failed to realize it." For a moment, she was not convinced, but she remained silent and let me go. She told all the teachers that she thought someone was beating me up, even though I didn't know at the time, so I should have kept an eye out. One unintended result of all the teachers watching me at school was that my teachers united to support me in my senior year. They had deduced, though I was never informed, that I wasn't the target of bullying at school and assumed it was something that happened at home because I didn't have any friends outside of school. The issue was that they were powerless to take any action without inciting chaos or coming to me directly. As it happens, they took the next best action. They assisted me in submitting to multiple universities as the year came to an end and made sure it was for a school a few hours away in order to get me out of my parents' house. They assisted me in selecting a specialization, and I ultimately decided to major in chemistry. So my science professors assisted me in applying for a scholarship. My always pleasant science and chemistry teacher, Mr. Daniels, took a chance and contacted my parents to set up a meeting to discuss the scholarship application. A week prior to the deadline for submissions, they visited the school, and my parents, Mr. McDonnell, Mr. Daniels, and I were the 5 people seated in the room. I don't think Mr. and Mrs. Other realize how much of an opportunity this is for Harry. Mr. Daniels had been circling my parents for nearly 20 minutes. He is one of the smartest kids we have seen in a long time, and he very well may have a full scholarship to study at university. That's good, but as I previously stated, I won't be footing the bill for the boy to go study. He needs to find employment and discover who he is in the world with a frown. What Mr. Daniels is trying to say is that the scholarship that Harry is being offered is fully funded, so you don't have to pay for it, Mr. Other, Mr. McDonnell, invited. That got no response from Dad, but soon enough, he had another reason. "Well, all these places are out of town, so he'll have nowhere to live, and again, I won't pay for that." "Mr. Other, we've already considered that," Mr. Daniels said. "I know someone who owns a company that's close to the university by foot. He has been searching for a junior employee to assist him, clean, and maintain order in his warehouse." He laughed. "It's not glamorous work, in fact, it can be really dirty and hard work, but the pay is decent enough to cover Harry's living expenses near the university as well as some necessities like food and books." Mr. Daniels gave me a strange look because he had told me something completely different when he had told me earlier about the job with his cousin. In a lab that is very similar to the chemistry I would be studying, I would be assisting him with his research. He shook his head subtly, winked, and turned to face me. Taking the hint, I remained silent. My dad took a moment to consider it. Mr. McDonnell entered the deal before Dad could change his mind. "Well, as long as I don't have to pay and he learns about hard work and it gets the boy out of my house, excellent," he said. "I have the paperwork here all ready for signature." After an additional hour, all the paperwork was completed and we left for our homes. 2 weeks later, I was taken aback when Mr. Daniels pulled me out of class and gave me a bulky set of envelopes. "You can now proceed. Your scholarship has been approved by the admissions board, and my cousin Norman is excited to meet you over the holidays and catch you up to speed before you start university." "Mr. Daniels, I'm at a loss for words." "Just remember me when you rise to the top," he said. Harry, you'll succeed in everything you set your mind to. You prioritize helping others over yourself and are intelligent and diligent. For some time now, all of the teachers at this school have a good understanding of what's going on at home. As I turned to defend my family, he raised a hand. It's all right, you don't need to speak up or stand up for anyone. We simply know that this is one way we could prevent one of our brilliant stars from colliding with the Earth and exploding. Since Australian schools follow the calendar year, my academic career came to an end at the end of the year, and I discovered that I had placed third overall in the school rankings. If my parents had allowed me to go on 2 extra credit off-school trips, I would have tied for first, but once more I was turned down. Mr. Daniels made plans to come pick me up after school to give me an orientation to my new job. He informed me that he was no longer my teacher and that I should call him Jack as we were leaving. It took us a little over an hour to get to the next city, where he helped me find an apartment and introduced me to Norman. I got to talk to Jack and Norman like friends, and it was a great 3 days. After hearing what I had to say, they clarified what I would be doing. After Norman made a request, I was given the option to choose between 2 one-bedroom apartments located near the school and my future place of employment. The apartment I selected was on the first floor of an older, well-kept apartment building, and it was closer to my place of employment. An elderly gentleman who worked as the building super told me to give him a call if I needed assistance. I think I was excited to see that there might be more to life than being ignored or treated poorly by my family when Jack and I talked about what I would be learning on the trip back. My mother arrived with a dozen boxes the night before I left and started helping me pack everything. Mom, I can't take all of this on the bus. Don't worry, sweetie. I am picking you up in these boxes in your father's truck tomorrow. I have spoken with him about it. You're moved after just 1 trip. Mom came over and gave me the biggest hug I have ever received, almost crying as she looked at me. But as soon as she was embracing me, she started crying. Ah, Harry. Harry, you are so lovely and precious, you deserve better. Although I am not very good at helping, I do have a gift. Mom left my room and came back carrying a little box. It contained an exquisite A4 notebook and what appeared to be a pricey fountain pen. The pen was always on my desk, and I would use the notebook to jot down ideas and discoveries in the years to come. Don't tell your father, but I wanted you to have something that was just for you, to know how much I love you. After a while, she finally left, and I heard her blowing her nose. That evening at dinner, not much was said. Joan, don't be even more of a loser than you already are, she said, dismissing me with a sneer before turning back to her phone. He sneered, Dad, I'll make sure to find another big brother there to help look after you, but I didn't think he knew anyone outside of town, so I felt like it was a hollow threat. And make sure you don't embarrass this family any more than you already have. Mom did not say anything, but she did look at me with the saddest eyes I have ever seen. Just before midnight, I received another gift from Greg, who entered my room and proceeded to beat me unnecessarily. He laughed at me as he left because I was unable to resist. So that you remember your place, mistake. I wouldn't say that I was sad to be going. The next year was fantastic. In college, I began studying new or combined concepts in chemistry as well as how to conduct independent research. When I wasn't in school, I was working with Norman and applying the theories I was studying. I was finally making my own money and could study whatever I wanted. I had never felt free, being away from my family for the first time, but if this was it, I was okay with it. In addition, Jack would frequently drive up to hang out and chat with Norman or me. He seemed to enjoy our time together, in my opinion. He became, in my imagination, the big brother I had always wanted Greg to be. Since I never went out, I was able to save almost everything, and when I finally had enough money, he assisted me in choosing a car. We just hung out and talked about girls, a topic I was too shy to look into at the time. The only bad thing was that I had to return to my parents' house for lunch once a month after I got my own car. These were required family get-togethers once I got a car, and Dad insisted that since I was an adult, I attend. Sunday lunch had become increasingly larger every time I wasn't there. Most Sundays now, my parents and siblings were surrounded by a constantly shifting group of people. It was almost comical. My family behaved as though my absence had relieved them of a burden. Everyone looked at me when I was there, almost as if I was expected, and I wondered why. I just waited for the afternoon to end so I could go back to my life while sitting on the couch in the corner. There were usually a lot of my father's employees present. Although I didn't enjoy going alone and sharing a room with them, I obliged to help. I achieved a breakthrough during this early period of learning and studying. I discovered a chemical process that improved the durability and strength of some plastic compounds. But in a matter of days, the plastic would decompose into its inert base components upon the addition of a particular inert common compound. Norman nearly fainted when I told him about my research at work. "You're a wizard, Harry. This will change our use of plastics globally and make everything a lot more environmentally friendly." We used the lab over the following week to repeatedly demonstrate the effectiveness of my formula. Jack arrived at his office at the end of the week after coming up from school, and we helped him catch up. "Harry, I think there are a few things here that Norman and I need to talk with you about. However, if we do them right, then your discovery and formula will make you famous." Jack and Norman guided me through the process of filing a patent to prove ownership of the discovery over the course of the following few weeks. I turned 18 just before school ended, so happily my parents weren't involved. Additionally, Jack assisted me in negotiating with Norman to establish a joint venture for the production of the plastic compound. Over the next 6 months, Jack received a single percentage point in the business in exchange for his trouble. I went from being a broke college student to bringing in the same amount of money annually as high-end management consultants. My social life remained limited to university coursework and the sporadic visitations to my parents. But I did take care of myself in a few ways. Initially, I borrowed money to purchase an apartment rather than pay rent. Jack assisted me in finding the location as usual, and together we went through the purchasing process. The distance was slightly more than one could walk, so I would need a good car instead of my always breaking 1982 green Mazda 323. I fell in love with her the moment I saw her as we were looking around the yards. She was a used, well-maintained 2010 LS7V Camaro with low miles and an upgraded suspension system. Because I was under 25, I had to pay a little bit more for insurance, but it was still worthwhile. She purred for me when I got in and got her going, and she was always eager to go for a drive. I would usually be found in the parking lot on Saturday afternoons, cleaning and polishing her in preparation for our next outing. I wanted to add a little polish to my personal image in addition to my Camaro. I purchased some sizes that fit me. Because of my high metabolism and thin build, I began to see myself as more than just my older brother's geeky punching bag. I had the greatest drive the next time I went to my parents' house for lunch. I opened my Camaro on the highway and got a few looks as I pulled into my parents' driveway. A few people, including my sister Joan, came out to see the noise because a V8 is not exactly a subtle pulling up. She stated, "Hey, buddy, this is a private family gathering." Invite, looking at me as if we were seeing each other for the first time. She didn't know what to say, so she said, "Hey, sis, it's just your dorky older brother coming back for lunch." Still, a few of her friends stopped by to inquire about the car and me. They were amazed that I owned a car like that and that I was Joan's older brother. Being the center of attention and being upbeat for once was interesting. Inside, I couldn't help but smile. Upon seeing my new outfit and smile, my mother gave me a hug even though she was on the verge of tears. Dad and Greg just gave me their usual glare. Greg appeared irate, and Dad appeared distressed. Apart from a few mean remarks, my father, brother, and sister hardly spoke to me after that, but they listened to nearly everything I said. Mom was interested in the specifics. "No, Mom, I'm still your Harry. I've just had some good luck for once." Mom had hugged me and asked to see how I had changed, and she had hardly left me alone since. I found a formula a few months ago that I believe will change the world, and Jack and Norman have been working with me to get what they refer to as a patent, that is, a right that requires payment from users of my formula. Mom was stunned. But that's not all. Norman and I have set up a new company to produce the compounds that my patent protects, and he's given me a 30% stake in the company. He's got a 30% stake in the company. We also gave Jack a 1% shareholding, and some international investors have the remaining 39%, so everything is leaning toward it being a huge success. Dad was wearing a frown. I believe he was going to say something, but he held back. It's only a little bit of money coming in now, however, over the next couple of years, I think I could be worth quite a bit, and I get to travel to interesting places to do research, I said, leaving my parents stunned for the first time. Greg, for the first time in his life, was unable to respond to me. It wasn't as nice as what Jack gave me, but it also wasn't as rude and reprimanding as usual. I returned to work and studies that week with a smile on my face that you couldn't take away. I looked forward to lunch with my parents every month, and it was always a special occasion. Naturally, I was left out in the cold. Mom and some of the family friends seemed interested in what I was doing, but Dad, Joan, and Greg never had any more time for me than they ever had. When I showed up one Sunday, Mom looked anxious. I gave her a hug, warmly thanked my father and siblings, and went to greet the day's visitors. Mom and Dad always had different people on Sundays, as I've mentioned, and today was no different. After a little while of people watching, I went and got a plate of food, took a seat in my usual spot, out of the way, and enjoyed my potato salad, crusty bread rolls, and sausages cooked on the barbecue. I didn't interact well with this group of people, even though I wasn't as socially awkward as I once was, especially the ones my parents hung out with. It felt like I heard an angel say, "Hey, mind if I sit here?" I turned to look again, and there she was. If I was appreciating the color forms and curves of my Camaro, then what was in front of me was far more beautiful than my car. She appeared to be slightly under 6 feet tall and slender. Her hair was soft brown and long, falling almost to her waist. Her hips appeared to be enormous beneath the jeans she was wearing, and her waist was extremely small. Her button nose, soft lips, and large brown eyes gave her a cute face. Her large, thick-rimmed spectacles accentuated her facial features. She may have talked to me just now. She giggled, sorry. She must have known that I was staring. Do you mind if I sit here? I wanted to sit and eat. We spoke about everything for the next hour, including my chemistry work, current films, musical preferences, and cars like my Camaro. Sure, I'm Harry. Diana? Diana attended college to study counseling with the goal of becoming an abuse counselor. She was into console gaming, loved science fiction movies, and preferred dogs over cats. Strangely, I discovered she lived about 30 minutes outside of town while returning to my apartment. I was enamored by the time I had to leave. While we were still conversing, Mom emerged to find me. Harry. Really, Mom, after finding me and moving to the spot where Diana and I were seated, she paused when she noticed Diana. Diana, how are you, sweetie? They said hello, and it turned out that Diana had recently started working for Dad, which is how she was invited. Hey Harry, I was wondering if you could help me out. Due to a family situation, Diana's lift had to leave early. Since you're passing by her house on the way home, I was wondering if you could drop her off for me. I put a hand on Mom's arm and said, Sure, Mom, that's if Diana doesn't mind riding with me. Mom looked relieved. I guess she wouldn't have to ask someone to go out of their way to drop Diana off. After 20 minutes, I was ready to go, and Diana was happy to go with me. I hugged Mom, and as I walked out, I waved to Dad for the first time. He smiled and waved back. Strange. After we talked for a while, Diana showed me the way to a small apartment complex that resembled the one I had lived in during my first few days without my parents. It's not much, 2 girls and I share a 3-bedroom flat, she said, clearly impressed by the ride in my Camaro. Together, we make ends meet. I had a nice time this afternoon. Generally, your family doesn't hold you in high regard, but this afternoon I saw someone who cared enough about his family that despite the distance between you, you came anyway. I would be the last to judge. Until recently, I lived in something similar, but just with 1 bedroom and no roommates. She turned to face me, and I could see she wanted to say something. The talk cooled off and there was an awkward silence. Diana, that's one of the nicest things that anyone has ever said to me. Diana was reluctant to go inside, even though we both knew she needed to for the first time in hours. Diana, yes, I wanted to ask her out, but I had no idea how. I'd never been attracted to a girl before, and I suppose no girl had ever paid attention to me. Next Friday, she stated. She was staring at the dashboard of my car, blushing a little shyly, but giving me the chance I had been longing for all evening. Next Friday, yes. Harry, you were trying to ask me out next Friday to go and see the new Marvel movie, weren't you? Yes, Friday. We traded phone numbers, emails, and all the standard stuff. Instead of giving her a goodnight kiss, I gave her an awkward hug instead. I felt like I was floating on air when I drove home, even though I didn't sleep a wink. Eventually, after a few hours of my morning lecture and afternoon work, Norman pulled me aside. I just blurted, "Yeah, Norman. She's beautiful. I met her at my parents'. Her name is Diana. She's studying at college and lives not too far away. Friday night, we're going to go and see a movie." Norman thought it was cute puppy love. Harry, would I be right in assuming that you have met someone? He spoke about it constantly the rest of the week. He helped me stay focused. Even though errors in the lab could result in significant financial losses, a mistake in my process could have disastrous results. That week, Diana and I had a few phone conversations. I was anxious when Friday afternoon finally arrived. I gave Jack a call back. He knew what I was going through because he had spoken to Norman. I gave him the rundown of my conversation with Diana for the first 10 minutes and told him I was afraid I would ruin our first date. He chuckled. "It's okay, Harry. Some nerves show that you like the girl. But you're going to a movie, so it's not going to be too awkward. For most of the time, you will be focused on the movie. So wear your really good dark blue jeans, that white shirt, and white sneakers we bought you a while ago. Don't forget to brush your teeth and wear deodorant. Just be your usual charming self, you'll do fine." "But I'm not charming, Jack." "Harry, I don't think you see it, but the girls check you out all the time. You don't see it. Just yesterday, a couple of the lab tech girls kept their eyes on you as you walked up and down the lab. Between your evolving dress sense, being a young guy driving a Camaro, and the confidence you have in your work, trust me, they notice you. It sounds like this Diana has noticed and wants to stake a claim before someone else does." That only increased my anxiety. As agreed upon, I picked Diana up that evening at 7. We left early to make it to the 7:30 session at the movies. We were both really impressed with the film. Marvel consistently executes their stories and special effects in a way that makes sense. We laughed a lot because this one also included a good deal of humor. Diana reached over and took hold of my hand during a hilarious scene in which the main character was literally caught with his pants down by his love interest before he could turn invisible. She was giggling uncontrollably. She left her hand in mine when the scene ended. Not that I could really complain. My focus ended up being divided between the screen and Diana's hand, so I believe we might need to watch the movie again. We strolled hand in hand to a cafe right outside the theater after the film. We sat down and ordered Italian hot chocolates after Diana dragged me over. You really should if you've never had one. They are heavenly. Imagine a thick chocolate shake, but with hot chocolate instead of cold. It's thick enough to support a spoon and warm. We got to discussing the movie we had just seen and its possible sequels. Subsequently, we delved deeper into our personal lives and discussed our future professional goals. We discussed my car. I told her how gorgeous she looked, dressed in dark jeans, a light blue blouse, and navy pumps, as we went on a nervous first date. She wore her hair tied back and brushed to a shine, and her glasses were thinner than her usual thicker ones that fit her better. But the best part of the evening was when we realized we were both passionate about people watching. Have you ever simply sat and observed those around you, their gait, their reactions to the things and people in their immediate environment? We discovered that we enjoyed people watching and making up ridiculous stories while doing so. We played off one couple as Russian spies attempting to gather information about our small town. Before the retirement home's curfew was up and the head warden threatened to put them on rations, another elderly couple was racing back. Another young couple, Romeo and Juliet from different houses who were falling in love, strolled hand in hand and shared a kiss every few meters. We grinned and laughed, and I felt like we had a terrific time that night. I didn't want to go home after such a wonderful evening, but it was growing late. We then took a car back to her home. I exited once more, turned around, and opened her door. She came out and hugged me, but then, to my surprise, she kissed me once, very lightly. However, the result was immediate. Diana laughed and moved aside. "Harry, you mean next Friday?" "Next Friday, you're taking me out." "Yes, you do have it." Untrained horses were unable to prevent me from getting close, she chuckled, quickly realizing the joke. We spent almost every weekend and some evenings each week together over the ensuing few months. We talked, held hands, and exchanged many chaste kisses for a long time. I had the opportunity to meet Cindy, her slightly older roommate. Despite her good looks and blonde hair, she wore traditional clothing. Little and mousy, Dawn was a brunette who kept mostly to herself. I had the chance to meet some of the lab team members and show Diana around the office before introducing her to Norman. As I showed Diana around, I noticed some of the girls were staring a little longer than was appropriate. Diana was staking a claim, and maybe Norman was right. We usually took a lot of trips together. Since she drove a small, outdated Datsun, we frequently traveled everywhere in my Camaro together. I got us both pairs of aviators, she had a prescription on hers. Diana felt bad about the nearly $300 price and was a little confused. But I believe I was infatuated with her and wanted to spoil her a little. "Let me get these for you, Diana." Few people are aware of the fact that I own a sizable sum of money from both Norman and my business and my patent royalties. It won't break the bank to buy you some shade so you can accompany me on rides. If I may say so myself, we did look nice exiting the Camaro in our matching aviators. We had been hanging out for about 2 months at this point, really enjoying each other's company, when things started to change between us once more. We had a Sunday family lunch at my parents' house instead of a Saturday one. We were both doing our favorite thing, people watching, from our usual spot just out of the way of everyone else. We had a little meal at the same time. Diana stepped in when Greg approached us, trying to get everyone's attention by waving a newspaper in front of our faces, claiming to have something that would make me look bad. "Hey, mistake, what's this?" he exclaimed, gesturing to the paper in front of me. "It must be wrong because you are a mistake," he chuckled. However, Diana's day was made by what he found amusing. Grabbing the page, she studied it for a moment with a frown before beaming brightly and giving me a wink. He laughed at his joke, but no one else laughed either. "This could be interesting, Greg. This newspaper article you're referring to, thinking to embarrass your brother," she said, swatting the page with her hand. "It's a feeder article to a much larger piece that the new business magazine is doing on an innovative young entrepreneur getting attention all over the world. So why would the mistake be mentioned? Did he screw up so the paper put his photo in as a way to highlight his stupidity? They might have realized that Greg was not going to win this, in my opinion." I sat there and said nothing, but I was actually grinning a lot as I went along. She gave a dramatic pause. "Harry is the focus of not only the newspaper but the full article. I was there when they came to his office and interviewed him. Although the amount of time that they referred to him as the hottest young entrepreneur on the planet was a little embarrassing," she complained, "and what I find cool is that Harry, my boyfriend, almost yelling his name, is being honored not only for his discoveries in the scientific realm but the cleverness putting worth over $10 million in under a year." Everyone came to a stop. Almost everyone was in complete shock. Greg did not know what had happened to him. My mother looked at me with a mix of pride and shock. My dad merely gazed. The local family friends were staring at me and doing double takes as they tried to re-evaluate what they had heard about me. Diana looked like the cat that ate the canary, her mouth agape. Me? It shocked me. My broad smile at seeing Greg look embarrassed was quickly replaced by a look of complete shock. Someone had just called me their boyfriend. Everybody needed more than a moment since we were all taking in different information. Right in the middle of everything, Diana turned to face me and grinned while perching her glasses on her nose and projecting an air of intelligence over everyone else in the room. She was, to me, right then. At that point, I was the center of attention for everyone, curious to learn everything there was to know about the article. At last, the newspaper was taken and read aloud, at which point the questions began. I clarified that my patent pertaining to the production and recycling of plastic, as well as the company Norman and I had started to make the compounds using a formula based on the patent, were receiving notice from all over the world. Large corporations rushed to test and see if our product lived up to expectations by purchasing it as soon as possible. I was aware that if it succeeded, we would have to significantly increase our capabilities across a number of nations. That afternoon, the questioning was unrelenting. Everyone wanted to know how much money I was making, if I was going to become famous, and if they could get involved in my business. When I told my family about the money and opportunity, everyone in the family cheered. But they all looked disappointed when I told them that jobs were reserved for those with industry training and that investments come later. When it came to me, Dad in particular had gone from the shock to his typical scowl. I guess he believed that simply by virtue of being my father, he should have received my discoveries and money. The only amusing thing was that Joan gave me her full attention all of a sudden. Since she was my sister, I suppose she felt that I was valuable to her or that I could give her money for nothing. To be honest, though, I didn't want to give my family anything, even though I wasn't above helping them out. Growing up, I had been treated like a second-class citizen by them. With Dad's construction company, they weren't impoverished, so I thought they could keep their money and I would keep mine. That afternoon, there were a few more noteworthy events. The first was that after the initial excitement subsided, Diana sat down on my lap and gave me the biggest kiss of her life. This was a complete lip lock instead of the quick kisses we had been exchanging. She pulled back, leaving an arm around my neck and staring into my eyes with a sultry look that left me feeling ecstatic as her tongue danced with mine. Diana was not even 6 months older than me, and I was only 19. I was taken, even though I had never dated a girl before. I smiled up at those big brown searching eyes and pulled her in for another kiss. "I'm your boyfriend, eh?" she asked. "Yes, silly," she replied, turning to face me. "You are my boyfriend, and I'm your girlfriend." I think I really loved kissing, even though it was only my second serious kiss. Even though we had been holding hands a lot, you could see that Diana and I always had some part of us touching whenever we were in the same room. I didn't understand it at the time. But there was more important stuff that happened that afternoon. Everyone helped to clean up shortly before Diana and I left. That usually meant the guys cleaned up, threw away the dishes, and filled the trash cans. I cleaned the tables and carried the gathered trash to the trash cans as usual, and today was no different. Diana had gone inside to assist with cleaning and stacking the dishwasher, and when I arrived, it appeared that Greg, Mom, and Dad were all chatting with Diana. I noticed that she looked a little flushed, but she didn't say anything else. Mom and Diana gave me a quick look as I approached, but Dad and Greg simply turned to leave. Diana followed me to the opposite side of the room from the other people. She hesitated for a second before asking, "What's wrong, Duh?" and meeting my eyes directly. She hesitated a little before nodding, "Nothing that you need to worry about now, but you're worried. Did my parents say something to upset you again?" For a moment, she thought, then looking down at her hands, she again spoke to me. "Yes, at the core of it was that they didn't like that I announced your success and that I shamed Greg in front of everyone. They don't think of you the same way I do. To them, you're a failure, but if you were going to be successful, they wanted it to be on their terms. And I think your father thinks he should be in charge of your money." I scowled. Well, Greg did that to himself, and he should have thought about it before opening his mouth. However, he's always been that way. He calls me the mistake because Mom and Dad were not expecting to have me. He and Joan were planned, I wasn't. He's never liked it any time that I was put in the spotlight, and not only did you announce the articles and how successful the business that Norman and I are creating is, but you also announced yourself as my girlfriend, she said with a grin. I pulled her hand in and gave it a kiss. As for Dad thinking that he should acknowledge him as the reason for my success and let him run my money, that is never going to happen. Outside of Jack and Norman, no one has shown an interest in me or my success until you. But now, I also have the challenge to look after someone I am quite taken with, so I'm going to work hard to be the boyfriend that you need. Oh, Harry, she exclaimed as she pushed me onto the couch and fell into my lap. Mom remained silent as she observed from across the kitchen. Diana sat on my lap, her head resting on my chest as she wrapped her arms around me. I don't know if she cried a little. The following few months felt surreal. I tried to spend as much time as I could with Diana. We were having some amazing make-out sessions, and she was beginning to visit my place much more frequently. She seemed to enjoy it when I even got to feel her up a little. But I don't think we were prepared. We weren't ready for sex yet, but it was probably in our near future. The business front was starting to get busy. The demand for the plastic compounds we were producing was growing, and I found myself having to travel frequently. The businesses that bought our product were interested in meeting me, the young inventor. While some of the travel was done within the nation, some of it was also done abroad. Norman and I frequently went together, and we had a PR agency send a number of consultants along. Big manufacturing companies were lining up to meet with us, and I was treated to first-rate meals at elegant restaurants. I was also afforded stays in a few upscale hotels thanks to the client. I gave amazing PowerPoint presentations, described our patented process in meetings, and showed how our compounds would function in production. Norman was pleased that every meeting went well and that orders kept coming in. Every time I traveled, I missed Diana and looked forward to returning home. Every few days, we made an effort to have a Skype conversation, and I could tell she was missing me just as much as I was. She loved seeing the hotel rooms I got to stay in, and I took a ton of pictures of the cities I went to. Having a boyfriend who traveled was exciting and depressing for her, as she had never really traveled. I was hoping we could take some trips together in the future. We missed out on family get-togethers for the next 3 months due to my travels. Diana mentioned that she would only like to go if I accompanied her. Something was there, in the background, that I felt. Diana would always have an excuse not to attend if I wasn't present, even though we were both always invited. Our investment team helped us secure facilities, which allowed us to start manufacturing in 3 new countries, which was one of the really exciting things that happened during our travels. This led to a massive expansion of the company. Following our return from the trip that led to the discovery of our 3rd site, Norman and I, along with our senior team, worked non-stop for 2 weeks, taking no breaks during the week. Although it was a busy time, everyone understood that if we got everything set up correctly, we would all be set for life. As a result, we made arrangements for our head office to serve as the primary laboratory and research facility, with our overseas offices producing our compounds before releasing them onto regional markets. This spared us from having to make everything and ship compounds all over the world, allowing us to keep control and manage local market conditions. Diana would often bring me lunch as we worked on everything, and we would frequently sit in the company lunchroom or in my office together. We were sadly unable to spend a lot of time together during this period. Even after we established the management structure within the first schedule, I continued to work long hours, up to 20 hours per day at times. At last, Diana and I hadn't even gone on a date by the end of the 3rd week of extra work, which made it 5 weeks since I had returned home. She finally had enough and made plans with Norman to give me the night off on Friday and the following Saturday. She kept it from me and let Norman tell me. When I began to object, he laughed. "Harry, that girl adores you. She's been trying to see you every day since we got back, and you need to see your girlfriend. She knows that you're busy and this is important, but Harry, she needs to know she's important to you as well. Take the evening off and tomorrow and spend time with her. Hell, you work harder than anyone. Make sure you take the next few days. We have got everything in order, and the work will always be there when you get back," he said with a crooked eyebrow and a bit of a grin, "and make sure to give her some of the gifts you bought for her. Let her know how special she is to you." I actually did a little bit more than that evening. I gave Diana a time to meet me at my apartment and told her I would be home at a decent hour. She melted into my arms and kissed me like her life depended on it when she showed up that evening. "Baby, I have missed you so much. Lunch at your office doesn't cut being able to hold you," she said with a grin on her face. "So where are you taking me tonight?" "Sydney." "Sydney? Where's that?" I grinned. "You know, Sydney, the city. Sydney, Australia. I should have told you earlier. However, we live in Melbourne, which is in Australia." A trip to Sydney was something that we had never done. She looked at me, and I could see that she wanted to burst out and scream. "A trip away, just the two of us, Dee. I've missed you so much." I agreed with the lunch visits and flying in and out. "I just wanted some alone time with you and me." I must have said the right thing because I was being attacked and mauled by my beautiful girlfriend, kissing me all over. The next thing I knew, she was asking, "When are we leaving?" "Now, but Harry, I can't. I have no clothes." I produced a packed suitcase from behind the couch. "I picked this suitcase up for you overseas and dropped by your place before coming home this afternoon and had one of your flatmates, Cindy, pack you some clothes." She looked at me, and her eyes held nothing but love. I continued, "I bought it for you so hopefully in the future, you can travel with me. Now, and then when I have to. I missed you so much that Norman had to talk me down from coming home early twice on that last trip." I looked at her and took a deep breath. I've got to confess. I'm in love with you." Looking down at my feet, I didn't move for a moment, just continuing to stare at my feet. She didn't say anything, and I had no idea if I had just said the wrong thing and might have to go to Sydney alone. I slowly looked up at Diana, and on her face was a giant smirk that I had seen before. She lifted her hand to caress my cheek, a tear in her eye. "Harry, I love you too." The kiss, when it came, started slow, arms around each other, our lips softly meeting, tongues exchanged, and I could feel warm tears against my cheek. I was again floating, just like that first kiss all those many months ago, and I knew that she loved me just as much as I loved her. "We need to go. I have arranged everything for the next few days, just you, me, and nothing else." We caught an Uber to the airport, jumped on the 1-hour-long flight to Sydney. We sat in business class, the hostess brought us champagne, and we sipped it together. Neither of us liked champagne, but we enjoyed the experience of sharing it on a plane. It was Diana's first time on a plane as well, and she was curious about everything, takeoff and landing, staring out the window, even using the bathroom. A corporate car waited for us as we disembarked, and the driver, who was booked exclusively for us for the duration of our trip, took care of our luggage and drove us into town. He dropped us off at Darling Harbour, where we dined upstairs in an upscale restaurant with beautiful views. Diana was smiling all the time. We tried a few different dishes, enjoyed a couple of drinks, and enjoyed ourselves. After dinner, we took a walk along the harbour and strolled hand in hand along the boardwalk. "Harry," she stopped as we watched one of the ferries dock, its passengers disembarking. I could feel this was going to be a serious chat. "Yes, my love," she sighed, "you have no idea how much I love hearing that, but I don't know if I deserve it." We walked over to a bench that overlooked the waters and sat down. "This is going to be a serious conversation, Harry. I know I don't speak a lot about my past. The reason is that my upbringing was not a happy one. Both of my parents are dead, and I never had any brothers or sisters. Up until a year before I was 18, I was a ward of the state, and that time wasn't a highlight of my life." I nodded. I had never asked because she changed the topic pretty quickly the couple of times I did try to ask. She continued, "There is a lot of darkness back there. I was pushed into doing things that I didn't want to do and things that I am not happy about." Tears were forming in her eyes. "Harry, you are my first love, the first boy that I ever cared anything about, and when I am with you, I feel wanted, desired, and that perhaps the dark things I mention of my past may not be the path of my future. But Harry, I don't deserve your love." Her tears were falling hard now. "I don't deserve it, as you are the purest and most honest man I know. You give me everything. This trip, in my mind, I never expected anything like this. I was content to be yours in our little town, but you make time for me, even though you have the most amazing career and fortune ahead of you. But I am damaged, broken, and I don't deserve you. I think she wanted to say more, so I decided to give her a bit of confidence. Diana, it is okay. I get that you don't want to talk about your past. I understand that there are some dark things there, which is why I never pushed. But the challenges that you have made it through have made you who you are, the woman I am in love with. We've known each other for over a year, and have been dating almost that long. I can tell you that there is nothing that you can tell me that would make me love you any less. Do you need to bury a body? I'll get a shovel. Got gambling debts? I'll go pay them off. I love you, Diana Brown, wholly and completely. She broke down even further. I pulled her in close and went to kiss her, to reassure her that I didn't care, but she pushed me back and stood, anger flashing in her eyes. No, Harry, my beautiful, amazing Harry. I don't deserve your love. I'm not pure, she sobbed more. Finally, I was beginning to feel I had an understanding of what she was trying to say. Dee, it is okay. No, it's not, Harry. I'm broken, unclean, and I can't give you the one thing in this world that I want to. She almost crumpled to the ground, sobbing and so quietly I almost didn't hear it. I'm not a virgin. I knew now this is what she was upset about. She didn't want to talk about something in her past and knew that I had no relationships before her, so I had not lost my virginity, but she had. I sat down on the ground beside her and put my arm around her as she cried. People passed us sitting on the ground, a man holding a woman. Some asked if we were okay, most just walked around us, looking at us but not wanting to get involved. Finally, after a while, I helped her return to the seat. Diana, from the first moment I met you, I was smitten. You know, I never really had any friends. My family saw to that and always made sure to mistreat me at any point that they could legally get away with it. My sister ignored me, my older brother beat me as often as he could till I had black and yellow bruises all over my body. Then when they would heal, he would do it again. My father openly scorned me, and my mother never defended me. She looked up at me, concerned for me in her eyes. Anytime the family went out, if they could leave me at home, they would. If they didn't have to pay for me, they wouldn't. I was only given Greg's hand-me-downs for everything, and they made me do 3 times as much household work for half the pocket money that my brother and sister had, if I got anything at all. If I didn't get it right, my father would take the belt to me and leave me sore for days. Diana was now looking at me, scared and a little angry, her brow creasing with worry at what I was saying. I have never spoken aloud to anyone what I have just told you. I never trusted anyone enough to give them the truth. Anytime someone got close to the truth, I defended my family and their actions. I don't know why, but I did. Dee, you are under the impression that I would discard you because of your confession. However, I love you more than I did a moment ago. Although you told me something you didn't want to, you took a chance to try and open yourself up to me. I know you don't want to tell me everything, and for now, that's okay. I trust you. That you're not a virgin, and I am fine with that. I didn't know before you told me, but I live in the real world and know that virginity at our age in today's society is rare, so I had no expectation one way or the other. I love you, Diana, and your revelation makes not a bit of difference to me. We are here this weekend because I love you. I am not going anywhere, and I hope that you're going to stay here with me, and perhaps a lot longer. My little speech and not giving a damn about her background or her virginity brought a new wave of tears. She held me tight and whispered, "It's not fair. I don't deserve you," along with "I love you" for another half hour or so. It was like a bubble around us, nothing else mattered as we held each other tight. When we stood up, I don't think I could have pried her from my side if I wanted to. She produced some tissues from her purse and dried her tears, and we walked to a bathroom so she could fix her makeup. I thought she looked beautiful, but she wanted to feel like she wasn't red and blotchy. Once she felt better and came out of the bathroom, we resumed our walk along the harbor boardwalk and found a little gelato place. both of us enjoyed a shared cup of cookies and cream. It was nearing 11 at night, and I felt it was time for us to head indoors, so I got out my phone and called our driver. I had booked a 3-bedroom suite for us at one of the fancy hotels near the famous Sydney Opera House. It overlooked the water and had a surrounding view of the harbour bridge and the Opera House. As we entered the suite, we were both taken by the view. We looked in all the rooms, sat down on the couch in the main room, and made out for a while, kissing. Kissing her is an experience that I never want to take for granted, and I let my love for her flow through the connection of our lips. I knew that soon we would have to address the sleeping arrangements, but Diana beat me to it. "Harry, would it be okay if we slept in the same bed tonight? I have had the most amazing night, both happy and sad, but tonight I just want you to hold me as I sleep. I want to feel safe and helped by the man I love." I hesitated only a moment. My only concern was that I could not keep my hands off her. I would not have it any other way. We retired to the enormous master bedroom. Both of our suitcases were already in the master, our driver just assuming that we would be sleeping together. I grinned. I was going to get to sleep beside the person I loved more in this world than anyone else. If I was fortunate, I might get to feel her up or maybe get a glimpse of something more. Diana grabbed a few things from her bag, went into the bathroom, and threw a kiss at me while closing the door. I slipped into some cotton boxers and crawled into the bed. What a bed it was! With the business, I have stayed in several hotel rooms, and some nice ones still. One thing that always gets me is that hotels will advertise a king bed as part of a room. Still, it's 2 singles put together with a mattress protector over the top to make it like a king bed, and they are annoying as there is a gap in the middle. This bed was a proper king mattress with high-thread cotton sheets that felt like they had been hand-washed, not gone through a commercial laundry. There was a range of pillow options from big fluffy pillows that you would sink into all the way to firm pillows that never changed shape. I tried a few different pillows when the door opened, and I forgot all about pillow choice. The woman of my dreams was standing there, highlighted by the soft bedside lamps and the bathroom light behind her. She had a massive grin on her face, and her long thin legs bare up to a pair of sheer black panties that had floral embroidery hiding all the right places. Her torso was exposed, showing me her tight abs. Continuing upwards, she had a tiny semi-transparent nightie on, but it stopped a little below her breasts. Right now, I was drooling at her body. She raised her arms in the doorway and posed, moving her hips to the side, accentuating her womanly features. "See anything you like?" My words escaped me, and I was still stuck on her body, going from her eyes to her breasts and then down to her panties, where I could almost see through it. She laughed and fell into bed beside me, our arms automatically going around each other as another round of passionate kisses occurred. But, unlike other times, our hands roamed over each other. "Do you trust me, baby?" she asked, looking into my eyes. "With my life," I replied. She smiled, removed her glasses, placing them on the nightstand, and moved down the bed. It was not long before we made love for the first time. It was amazing. We cuddled for a while, then Diana suggested, "Shall we shower together?" which was yet another experience that I savored. I soaked most of her body, running my hands all over her. We also had our first shower sex together. Later, after cleaning up in the shower again, we dried off and walked back into the bedroom. Diana frowned. "We might have to call and get the sheets changed. There is almost a puddle in the middle of the bed." I laughed a little, thinking back to our antics. "Let's worry about that in the morning, my love. There are another 2 bedrooms here." We pulled the sheets down to let the master bed dry and walked naked into the spare room across the hall, jumped into bed, and snuggled up against each other. "Love you," I said as I began to drift off. "Love you, Diana," she said, holding me tight. I woke the next morning to a warm body beside me, an arm over my torso. She was still asleep and I noticed snoring quietly. I moved, and she began to wake, so I rolled over and stared at her while she woke up and opened her eyes. "Good morning, my love." "Good morning, Mr. Morning Breath," she giggled. While we had washed last night, neither of us cleaned our teeth afterwards, so kissing was to a minimum. However, it didn't stop us. We fooled around a little, however, we were both hungry, and we did brush our teeth before getting dressed and heading out to breakfast. Watching Diana getting dressed for the day was like watching art being created. "I'm going to tease you all day," is all she said. We headed out, let reception know our room needed changing, and headed out to find a cafe to have something to eat and people watch. We found a little independent cafe, found it had great coffee and a decent menu, and sat down to people watch and enjoy the day. Sitting side by side, Diana never let her hand stray far from mine as we enjoyed it. "Honey, I hope you know you rocked my world last night," I laughed. "Just as you rocked mine." "No, Harry, I'm serious. I know I told you I'm not a virgin and I've had sex twice before." Last night, she blushed, it was not pleasant. Then she paused for a moment. "But last night, you showed me what it was to make love truly. You made me feel special, like the only woman on the face of the planet, and I got to do things and feel things that I have never thought I would ever feel." I grinned. She blushed a deeper shade of pink. I was curious, so I asked, "Like what?" She took another sip and looked at her coffee before looking back at me. "Well, I have never gone down on someone before. However, I felt so special doing that for you. And would do it again." She was struggling to voice this, but I was loving how awkward it was making her. She pressed on. "Harry, also, I have never gushed like that before, ever. Not even by myself." Then again, she paused. "Baby, you were amazing, and I couldn't get enough of you. I love how you gave me everything. To me, you were a virgin again, and I was glad I got to take you." Leaning over, she kissed me tenderly, and we finished our late breakfast and walked around the city for the rest of the morning. I then called our driver, and 20 minutes later, we were on a tour of Sydney. He took us to the Opera House, we walked around, got selfies, and had a great time. He took us to the Harbour Bridge and managed to get us in just in time for a bridge climb, an experience where you get to climb up the bridge over the top of traffic. Diana and I had a brilliant day. We got dropped back to the hotel room and made love in the spare bedroom, learning more about each other's bodies and what we did and didn't like. I found out more about her erogenous areas and how to make sure she had almighty orgasms. We showered together, washing each other from head to toe. As we went to get dressed, I stopped Diana from getting anything out of her suitcase. Standing naked, she looked at me. "I have a surprise for you." I went to the robe and brought out a suit bag. Zipping it open, I brought out a little black dress, matching shoes, and a clutch that I had bought for her in Paris when Norman and I were there for business last month. It was a designer label. It took me over an hour of going through photos with the salesperson, speaking poor English, to get her size before I was happy with the purchase. She was shocked but pleased. She put on some black panties, and then I helped her into the dress. She was shining and twirled around, admiring herself before heading to the bathroom to do her hair and makeup. "Harry, this must have cost a fortune. You know you didn't need to." "I wanted to, Dee. I have the money, so I don't mind spoiling the people I love. People who will appreciate it, not demand it." "Do you mean like your family?" It was the first dark cloud of the day, and I frowned as I brought out my suit bag with a new suit that was made to match her dress. "Yes, I didn't think you knew about that. They have been getting pushier, asking for money from me. Joan keeps sending me text messages, and Dad leaves voicemails. I wouldn't say I like talking to him, but he believes that they are the reason I am successful, so he feels that I need to give them their dues." Diana tried not to frown as she was applying makeup. "Eyeliner, I think they call it. Your father and sister have both tried calling me while you have been traveling. I've gotten voicemails with them asking me to convince you to help them with one thing or another. They haven't yet been directly threatening, but I have avoided calling them back, and I am not looking forward to the next visit out to their place. It's why I don't want to go there without you. Your mother is nice, your sister doesn't seem to care much, but your father and brother. It's okay, babe. I do understand. You heard some of the things that I had to put up with growing up last night while we talked. I get it. She stopped and came over to me, looking in my eyes and giving me a gentle kiss. "You are one of the bravest men I know, Harry. Others I know have a hard time talking about my past, and perhaps one day I will be able to talk about it. But in some ways, you have had it worse than me." We finished getting dressed, and we had a car waiting to take us to an upper-class French restaurant. Later, I had arranged tickets to a symphony at the Opera House, but she didn't know. At dinner, Diana ordered a fancy salmon dish, poached and with superb tender greens. I ended up having a steak with burnt butter sauce and excellently crafted vegetables. We finished our dinner and were contemplating dessert when one of the waiters walking by accidentally dropped an ornately carved box that looked like it held jewelry from the period of French royalty. I was instantly out of my seat, asking if the waiter was okay and helping him pick up everything and helping him on his way. He acted a little embarrassed, but was otherwise fine. Most of the restaurant had stopped to watch the commotion and saw Diana get out of her seat and move to help as well. The waiter moved away and then turned to watch what would happen next as I stayed kneeling and turned around, holding the small box open with a diamond ring inside. Everyone in the restaurant suddenly held their breath, and Diana gasped. "Diana Brown, from the day I met you, you have captured my heart. You make me want to be a better man. Your smile lights my way, and your hands holding mine makes me feel like there is nothing in this world that I can't do. This past year has shown me that my soul belongs to you, and I would be ever so honored if you would consent to be my wife." For just a moment, everyone held their collective breath, and she looked at me. Then she remembered to breathe. Yes, she screamed and threw herself at me, hugging me as I stood. I plucked the ring from the box, and she held out her fingers, allowing me to slide the engagement ring on her hand. Everyone cheered, and a round of applause sprang up. She beamed, looking between the ring and myself, as the restaurant manager and the same waiter that dropped the ring box came over to us. He congratulated us and camped our entire meal in front of everyone, happy to see an accepted proposal. As he left, another couple came over and congratulated us, and for the next half hour, many people came over. I don't think I had seen Diana so happy before. The last couple coming over, though, made her gasp. One of her roommates, Cindy, walked over, hand in hand with Jack, whom I had known, but Diana hadn't known that they had been dating for about a month. Jack had told me, and I was happy. They were only a few years apart in age, and they suited each other. Cindy gave Diana an enormous hug, as Jack gave me a hug like a big brother. We sat back down at the table, and they joined us for dessert. Over a cheese and pâté dish, I let Diana know how I planned it all out and had Jack and Cindy flying this afternoon to wait for my proposal. I then surprised the three of them that I had tickets for tonight's symphony at the Opera House, with a limo waiting outside for all of us. It was a grand evening. I had my fiancé on my arm, dressed to the nines, a man who I saw as my best friend beside me, and his new girlfriend as well. The symphony's music was amazing, and since we were all dressed up, we felt part of something bigger. It was around 1 in the morning when the limo took the four of us back to the hotel. We parted ways with Jack and Cindy heading to the room I had got for them, us 2 hours. I wonder if Jack's going to get lucky with Cindy tonight as much as you're going to, Miss Diana. Then undressed, taking everything off except her glasses and her engagement ring, she crawled onto the bed and bent over. I need some hard loving, Harry. I think the sun was starting to come up when we finished, and we once again needed to sleep in one of the spare rooms, due to the mess we left in the master bedroom. We slept until almost noon when a text message from Jack woke us up. "Hey buddy, it's lunchtime. Are you two decent enough to come and join us before we fly home?" I replied that we would be down in half an hour, and we kissed, got up, showered, dressed, and packed. I called reception, and they sent someone for our bags, and we met with Jack and Cindy. "Whoa, Diana, are you okay?" Cindy had a slight look of concern for a moment as Diana used my help to sit down at the restaurant cafe in the hotel's lobby. "We didn't get to sleep until around 5 this morning, and I am a little tender from Harry's attention," Diana explained. Cindy took a moment and then burst out laughing. Jack reached out with a clenched fist to me, and I gave him a fist bump. After that, we ordered some food, and the girls headed to the bathroom while Jack and I talked. About last night, after my first night, he made sure I was okay, I explained, dropping the words "Harry is the man" several times. We then got onto a chemistry discussion about my upcoming graduation from university. Although when the girls got back, Cindy was looking at me with a bit of envy in her eyes and a whole lot of respect. When she whispered in Jack's ear, his eyes went wide, and he turned back to me. "Holy dude," was all he said. I have no idea what they said, but I felt like the man. We were excited to get married, and within a week of returning, we had set a date just over 6 months later. Diana also all but moved in once we got home. There were not many nights that she wasn't staying over, just now and then to help one of her soon-to-be-former flatmates out while she moved things. We also spoke about her studies, and she chose to do her study remotely to be near me. She became a little bit of a fixture around the office, using the coffee table by my couch for her laptop and books. While she slowed down her subjects, she still kept high marks. It was also great as I had her travel with me a little too. While it was mainly for work, some of our clients and investors doted on Diana being with me and seeing the love of my life. I loved showing her some of the places I had been. We ended up making love in pretty much every city we visited. On the family front, it was quite a mixed reaction. We made sure that we went to the next family gathering following my proposal in Sydney, and we let them know that we were going to get married. Diana was very proud of showing off her simple yet elegant diamond engagement ring. Everyone's reactions were varied. Mom was excited and couldn't help but smile. I even got a grudging congratulations from my father. Joan was surprisingly the most vocal of the group, heartily approving of our engagement, telling everyone that she'd love to see Diana make an honest man out of me. "Oh, honey," was Diana's reply to Joan. "Down the bridge of her nose with how funny your brother made me walk the day after he proposed, I can't tell you. He's one hell of a big man." Joan pretty much spat her drink all over the table, and my mother blushed, as no one likes to hear about their son's sexual prowess. My father and brother also went red, but I am not sure if it was anger and embarrassment. For the rest of the afternoon, Diana kept getting looked at by everyone. I was content to sit back and bask in the glory that my fiancé brought my way. It was one of the very few times that no one bothered me. Another fun thing was that I also got to graduate from university with my degree in chemistry. While I thought about doing postdoctoral work, between the business and Diana, I didn't think I would have the time. Besides, I could always go back later to study. The company was booming. We had over 800 employees in 8 locations around the world. Here at home, we produced the main compound and then shipped that to the other plants to produce the special plastics we had become famous for. The patent I had made it difficult for other companies to produce the compound without paying me a fee, so I knew that Diana and I would never lack money. It was that front that became the only issue in the lead-up to the wedding. My legal team was employed to look after my best interest, which included protecting my assets in marriage or in the case of an accident. This meant that they wanted Diana to sign a pretty detailed prenup. While she was fine with it, surprisingly, my family were not. At the regular family gathering, we were all sitting around and talking about our upcoming nuptials. I was sitting on one couch with Diana, Mom, and Dad on another. Joan was sitting with her current boyfriend, Fred. This one was named, or I could have just made that name up. She had a different one at every gathering these days. Greg sat alone in his armchair. I don't think there were too many girls out there who could put up with him. He was always self-righteous and thought he could not say or do anything wrong when it often went the other way. I think it was because my dad gave him everything and never pulled him up. Everyone except Diana and I were against the prenup. "It's just not right, boy. You're marrying Diana, and everything should be shared. A prenup is the rich man's way of keeping everything for themselves and never giving it to the little guy," my dad was saying. "But, Dad, I am one of the rich, and it's not that I have anything to hold back from Diana," I replied. She squeezed my hand. "However, you need to understand that the prenup is not just to protect me but all of my employees. It makes sure that if anything happens to me, everyone, including Diana, is looked after," I explained. Dad looked upset. Besides, according to the terms of the agreement, Diana is well looked after in any event, so I would never hold anything back from her, I added. Diana squeezed my hand again. Dad, Diana had taken to calling my parents Mom and Dad since we got engaged. I think it makes Dad awkward, which is why she did it. I am 100% in Harry's court. I'm going to sign the prenup because I know that he will always look after me. I've got nothing to lose, and it's the right thing to do, she said, staring my dad down. For a few moments, it was like there was an unseen conversation going on. If it were me, there would be no prenup. I'd just give her everything and walk away, Greg said with all his wisdom. Joan looked at Greg and said, God, you're so stupid. I am not. Yes, you are. Whenever you open your mouth and call Harry a mistake, you make me wonder if he is or you were, Joan retorted. Mom piped in before it got worse. Enough, you two. This is ultimately between Harry and Diana. They will make the choices that are best for them, she said. Dad got up, throwing his hands in the air, and walked away. None of you gets it. Life sucks. As the weeks led up to the wedding, the invites went out and people accepted. There was a bit of a breakdown of various groups that we were involved with. There was the contingent of family and friends. I'd asked Jack to be my best man, and Diana asked Cindy to be her maid of honor. We had a lot of the staff from our office invited. This included a number of the managers from our overseas plants. Even a few government officials and some professional contacts from big business wanted to be seen at the wedding of a young professional like myself. We even had a couple of reporters that had requested to attend. Our PR firm granted that if all the photos and stories were approved before they were published. Another significant investment we made was buying a block of land and starting construction on a house. It was a big 7-bedroom, 2-story house situated on 100 acres, about 40 minutes drive from the city and an hour from the office and our laboratory. It wouldn't be finished until a few months after our honeymoon, but it was going to be beautiful. The master was a massive amount of the top floor with big walk-in robes and my favorite of a double shower with 2 separate shower heads and an overhead shower rows. In addition, we were getting a big kitchen and family room, a media room, study, and multiple car garage. Again, we planned big with the idea that we never wanted to while I was doing well. We did end up taking a small mortgage on everything, however, that would be paid off in a few years if everything kept going well. I also upgraded my car. I was keeping my original Camaro, the thing was a classic. But I bought a new one, a 2020 GTR Series Camaro burnt orange with black racing stripes. This had over 500 horsepower and a 6-speed manual gearbox, and you could hear it coming long before you saw it. We bought a brand new Jeep JL Series for Diana with a hardtop removable roof and all the optional extras like seat and steering wheel warmers, a complete navigation package, and good boot space.